Hey everybody, here it's Mike. We'll get started here in just a second. If you're joining in, this is how to unlock your dream home. First time home buyers webinar guide for the Denver market. It's a crazy market, so we'll get started here in just a second. And as we get started, if you do have any questions, go ahead and use the live chat that is available for you probably off to the right hand side of the video that you're watching. As we go through, we also have a lending expert from Elevations Lending on with us. So she's able to answer any questions if you have those related to lending, or even if you just have any questions related to the material that's being presented, go ahead and type that into the chat and we'll be able to see that and answer your questions in real time. So getting started here in just one more minute. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Obviously, you're joining in here because you've had thoughts of getting in and potentially buying a home, whether it be your first home or not. Hopefully, we can give you some information that will give you some insight as to how the process works, how you can put together your team, and information about the mortgage process or anything that you have going on there. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all of this fun stuff and see where we can get through hopefully keeping this under an hour. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Mike Wadsley. I've been a realtor here for going on 7 years and in the real estate industry for more than 15 years, 12 to 15 years, and been doing this a little bit at a time. Member of the Realtors Association, a short sale expert, and have been working in real estate, doing investing in a number of things for quite a while here. So hopefully the information you're going to get out of this will be something you can take away with you and use as you take a look at purchasing a home. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is figuring out why you would want to buy a home. Honestly, there's a lot of reasons why you could want to buy a home. If you're looking to find room to entertain, you've got a job change, you want to be closer to family, possibly for financial reasons. Maybe you need that room for Fido to run in the backyard. The family is growing. And most recently, a lot of folks are working from home. So needing that additional space to be able to work from home and find a place where you can close the door and be alone and take all your conference calls. So hopefully for any one of those particular reasons, that's leading you into taking a look at buying a home. But let's take a look at some of the financial reasons as to why you might be looking at buying a home. Obviously, the demand for housing continues to drive up and up and up. We know that housing prices aren't going anywhere. They aren't stopping, and we anticipate even through some of these slower times that appreciation is going to continue to go up. So we need to make sure that we can get you into a home now, just in case you have the opportunity to take advantage of that, as it says, getting your piece of the boom. That little infographic off to the right-hand side that you're seeing here, it says, illustrates that if you were to purchase a $500,000 home right now and get an appreciation of 3.5% over the course of the next 2 years, you could have potentially $35,000 in equity in that home in the course of the next 2 years. Now, of course, this is just for example purposes. Your situation may be the same, may be different, maybe appreciation may be higher or lower, but this at least gives you an idea of what that appreciation could look like even just after 2 years. The other reason that you might be considered from a financial perspective purchasing a home is if you look at the 5-year trajectory of what it could mean based upon renting versus buying. So what this little graph here is showing us is that in the course of 5 years, if you were to rent over the course of the 5 years, and this is an average rent in the Denver market, monthly costs for a home to rent at $3,100, almost $3,200 a month. Whereas if you were to buy something, and you see here in the numbers in the lower right-hand corner, we're looking at an average. Your average rate right now for annual percentage rate is in the 7s. Your total cost for that rent over the course of the 5 years would be about $188,000, almost $189,000 you'd be spending on rent. That at the end of the day, that is rent that is going to paying someone else's mortgage. Wouldn't you rather be taking that money and taking that $180,000, which is less money out of your pocket, and that is actually going towards your property, towards your financial future? So make that consideration as well. So this one's kind of showing us here that you could save quite a bit of money, as well as in that 5-year period, you'd have that appreciation of almost $94,000. So your financial picture, buying versus renting, is much higher, especially as you stay longer and longer in that rental. So one question that I get asked all the time is, when is the right time to buy? Well, as you can see from this picture here, there's no real crystal ball as to when it might be the right time to buy. However, what we do know is the sooner that you do decide to buy, the better off you're going to be. This graph that you see here we pulled from the Federal Reserve Board, the St. Louis Fed, shows you here the median sales home price sold over the course, and this is just since Q1 of 2019. You can see how it takes a few dips here and there, but the overall trend from left to right is showing that the appreciation of that home is going up. And keep in mind that that little gray strip in the left-hand side of that is COVID. So we saw all these things, the economy slowed and all of those things that happened throughout COVID. Even then, things were going up. The other question we get is, what about rates? Of course, we're seeing in the media right now, watch the news and they say rates are high, rates are high, rates are high. Well, it's all relative. Yes, we did have here a couple years ago rates that were historically low, rates that we'll probably never see in your or my lifetime in the future. So what can we definitely know and taking a look at historic rates? Well, this other graph here that I've pulled from the Federal Reserve Board shows us that since 1975, here's a graph of what those rates look like. So folks who were buying in the early 1980s, they were paying 18, sometimes 19% interest. And if you talk to those folks, even if they bought at 18 and 19% interest, they're still happy that they sold and got into the housing market when they did, because overall that appreciation has definitely benefited them from a financial perspective. Take a look then all the way down into the right-hand side of that graph, which shows you those historic low rates. I know I myself have a 2.99% interest rate on my home mortgage, which unbelievably low. But still, let's take a look at where rates are in relation to where they have been. We're in the 7s right now with where interest rates are. We take a look at the interest rates and try and see if we can grab a crystal ball and see what's happening with mortgage rates. And the federal interest rate goes up and down, and we hope it goes down at some point in time again. But as of right now, we don't exactly know what that looks like. Another question I get is, what about a housing bubble? Of course, back in 2008, we saw that historic housing bubble where housing prices just absolutely plummeted. Well, we don't really see that there's going to be any kind of a bubble happening. At this point in time, according to all of our financial gurus, they say, spoiler alert, the housing market is not crashing. And how do we know that? We know that because at this point in time, the demand for housing continues to be at an all-time high, with the supply being at an all-time low. So folks that have those low interest rates aren't willing to sell, so there's not a whole lot of houses to buy. So we know that housing is only going to continue to appreciate. So not really a bubble at this point in time. We may see dips from time to time, but overall, I would say that we're probably not going to see any kind of a bubble, especially anything that could be even remotely compared to what we saw in 2008. There were some fundamental issues with the way that the financial system worked back in 2008, and our government has stepped in and helped us to make sure we regulate some of those things to prevent that in the future. What about a recession? So there we get the media telling us that we're headed into a recession and headed into a recession. Well, what is a recession? A recession is just, 2 down quarters of GDP. Historically, we go through recessions all the time. But the most important thing as we're looking at as it relates to housing here, a recession does not mean falling prices. If you take a look at this graphic here, this is a list of the last 6 recessions. And even in 4 out of these 6 recessions, we still saw appreciation. Most recently, they told us that we had 2 down quarters back in 2020. During COVID, we still saw appreciation of 6% home prices year over year. So it just shows us that a recession, even though we'll experience one from time to time, doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see drop house prices. The other thing we have in our midst right now is what's coming as a part of class action lawsuits that were filed in Missouri. So you may have heard about what's going on with these class action lawsuits, how commissions are being paid, and all those things involved. Well, the nice thing about being in Colorado, however, whatever you've heard, buyer's agents don't work for free. Now, if any agent tells you that they work for free and that the seller is going to pay for the buyer's commission, it may be the case that they do, but at the end of the day, buyer's agents, for better or for worse, we don't work for free. But what we do quite often see is a seller will offer to pay some, all, or a portion of the buyer's agent commission. So what really is coming out of this lawsuit? It's telling us we have to be more transparent about how does a buyer's agent get paid. Sometimes it's by the seller, sometimes it's by a combination of the buyer and the seller, and sometimes it is by the buyer. In those instances, we have to figure out, we'll go through and sign an agreement between you and I and go through and make sure we outline and are very transparent about how my commission is paid. The nice thing about Colorado is we've had an agreement that is required to be in place between a buyer's agent and a buyer in place for many, many years. In 38 other states throughout the country, that has not been the case. And so what we've seen is those states are starting to panic because the federal government is saying you now have to absolutely have that in place before you go out and show homes. Now, if you go out and you are being shown homes with a potential buyer's agent that you haven't signed an agreement with, the Department of Justice has now said that has to be in place before you go there so that you as a buyer have a clear understanding of how the buyer's agent could be getting paid. So we have, taking a look at it, what the sellers are now seeing is the sellers are starting to realize that there's a possibility they might not have to pay a seller's commission to the buyer's agent. So some of them are taking pause and trying to figure out whether or not they want to offer it. Now, for the good seller's agents that are out there, they're explaining to the sellers how all this works and the potential impact of not offering a buyer's agent commission. So as we go through and we take a look at various houses for sale, we will have to make sure we keep in mind what is being paid from a commissions perspective by the seller and what's not, and take that into consideration for the overall picture for the house that you might be looking to buy. With all this in there, though, then the question you ask yourself is, why should I hire an agent? Well, a buyer's agent is there really to act on your behalf. Because honestly, at the end of the day, this is a pretty complex process that we have to go through. There are quite a few forms, quite a few disclosures, and quite a few things that are going on with regard to how the process works. And you'll see that here in a little bit. I mentioned here at the top of the hour that I have quite a bit of experience in how all this works, and so I would be your guide as to going through that. I also do have an access to a wider range of properties available in seeing what we have out there on the market and what's available to the general public on the market, and sometimes things that are not available. I also have market knowledge and insights as to what's going on. So for a lot of houses in the Denver metropolitan area, they reside in HOAs, or homeowners association jurisdiction. And navigating some of those HOAs from time to time can be a little bit difficult. And because of my experience and the fact that I've been around for quite a while, I do have the ability to take a look at what is happening with those HOAs and also in some of those markets. You might see from time to time folks that will call it an up-and-coming market or an up-and-coming neighborhood. That may or may not be the case. And in that instance, what we have to make sure is that there's somebody who's working on your behalf and knowing what actually is happening in those different markets and those different neighborhoods. I'm also an expert negotiator. A lot of times folks take a look at negotiation levers that can be pulled as just the price and terms and a few things there. But there's also things that can be contained within a purchase offer to purchase a home that can skew things in your favor. I think back to a buyer that I just helped get into a home. We were one of 20 offers on this property. And what it came down to is my ability to go through and put different things, different terms in the contract that skewed things in the client's behalf that allowed my client to purchase the property instead of someone else. There's also a number of time and stress savings that go along with this. Because this is something that I've gone through and done a bunch of times, I also know how to make sure that I can take on a lot of the stress that you don't need to in trying to learn how all this works if you try and go about it on your own. I also have a professional network that allows me to know folks like contractors, flooring contractors, movers, stagers, and a bunch of different folks that can come in, people that I have worked with in the past that I know do good work and do give you a good value for what they're looking at. I can also help you avoid some of the potential pitfalls. You know, we see folks from time to time go through and hit a few speed bumps through the process. And even though I have all the experience that I've been able to gather over the past 7 years, there's still times when road bumps come up. But my experience allows us to avoid a lot of those road bumps. And when we do hit the road bumps, be able to navigate them and get us back on track. And sometimes I keep getting told that more of what I provide is emotional support. And emotional support, I keep saying that with regard to folks who, buying a house is a very emotional process. And having me on your side allows me to take a step back, have the completely objective picture, and making sure that at the end of the day that we're keeping all the legalities and all the financial components in mind. So for anybody who's been around for any length of time and likes the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and played the Nintendo, this is kind of what, if you decide to go at purchasing a house, you need to make sure that what you have is that somebody on your side, right, so that you can knock out Mike Tyson. So let's start diving into the actual process. So as we start to talk about getting started, I kind of look at it as 5 pillars of home buying. There's one team. So we'll talk in here in a second about how you can assemble your team, a group of folks that are looking to help you out. I heard here last week that it is estimated 61 different people are involved in the purchase of a home. So having your team put together as part of that 61 is very important. We'll also go through and talk about one financing plan. So we'll talk about the mortgage process and a few information and a few nuggets related to that here in a second. We'll also be looking at how do you go about looking for a home. So that one home search, how do you make sure that as you look for that property, you're looking in the right spot and looking at the right things? One process. We'll start to dive down into what it means to go through and get through all of those contracts and disclaimers and all those things that I get trained in and come to the table knowing what all that looks like. And then we'll also dive a little bit down into what does that one move look like. Nobody likes to move, but the probability of being able to move into your new home is definitely something that is pretty exciting. So that's something I can help you out with as well. So let's talk about your one team. So we're going to start to look at that a little bit at the buyer's roadmap. In that so your one team, you see here our little circles that we've got on this particular slide is showing us some of the folks that we're going to talk about here in a second. So at the top of the list here, of course, is your realtor. So me, I come in and I play a couple of roles. Really, I'm in there as a home consultant. So I help you demystify the road to home ownership and make sure that you understand how things work along the way. Go through and I'll explain a lot of options to you. At the end of the day, of course, will be your home and your decision as to what you're looking at. But I'm also here to make sure that you take a look at any of the options that might come about. I'll also be there all along the way to advise you about all the facets of buying and moving. So all of the contracts, the disclaimers, and all those kinds of things that are going to come your way. I'm a documentation and contract specialist, so I have the ability to read the purchase contracts. We have a pretty lengthy purchase contract in the state of Colorado that we are required by the state law to use. So I've been trained in how to read all those contracts, fill all that information out, and I'll be able to not only complete those contracts, but help you understand what is in those contracts and what, at the end of the day, you're signing. So I'll kind of go through some of this, so we'll skip a little bit. I'm also a pricing specialist, so I also have access to data that allows me to go through and make sure that whatever type of home you're going to be looking at purchasing, we are able to pull comparable properties and make sure that you're getting the best value for your money. And most of all, we're not only going to get out there and make sure that you find a home, but hopefully you get out and find the right home. All right, so let's talk about our next team member. So we have our lender. So there's a number of different types of lenders that are out there. You have brokers versus bankers and online lenders. So your person who is going to come in as your lender is your guide, your financing options. So they should be out there looking to provide you with your best option to overcome any of your potential financing hurdles and provide other options that are necessary in the process of purchasing a home. All right, they'll help you through the loan process. They'll make sure that you can gather all the necessary documentation. They'll help you out there shopping for rates and terms. And most of all, they'll make sure that you can help determine how much you can afford. So I mentioned here at the top of this slide that there are brokers, bankers, and online lenders. And it might warrant just to hear a second talking about what each one of those is. So you have mortgage brokers. Brokers work on your behalf and have the ability to take a look at multiple lenders and multiple different options for getting you a mortgage on a home. As opposed to, then you also have a banker. So your banker is the person at your local institution. So your Chase Bank or your U.S. Bank or your local credit union. And those people work for that bank, and it is their job to pitch and get you to use their lender, use their bank to be able to purchase a home. You also have these online lenders, companies like Rocket Mortgage and a couple of others that you can find online. And those are the discount lenders who are not as versed in what is happening, and they too are interested only in providing the information related to their programs. So, at the end of the day, kind of my preference is looking at some of those mortgage brokers because they're out there looking at various things, various lenders, and are able to kind of shop around and help you look at that. When it comes to how a lender gets paid, the buyer usually pays all these fees. The fees vary from different loan programs, brokers, bankers, and all those different things. But at the end of the day, when you choose the lender that you're going to work with, your lender should be very upfront with you, telling what kind of fees are involved in getting yourself a mortgage. One of the important people in your process is also your inspector. So your inspector is an independent professional who is able to come in and take a look at the physical condition of the property. They take a look at the interior and the exterior of the structure and make sure that you going into purchasing a home know everything that could potentially be amiss with the property, and also calling out a lot of the things that are good about the property as well. You have the ability to do a couple of different inspections. The one is the physical kind of overall inspection. The second is a sewer scope. So they'll actually take a camera and stick it down the sewer and make sure that there's nothing impeding the ability for the sewage to get out of the house. In Colorado, we also have a problem with colorless, odorless gas called radon that is known to be carcinogenic and quite often can be found in lower lying areas of a property. An inspector can come in and run a test and make sure that you know what those radon level tests come out to be, and if need be, can help in getting put together a radon mitigation system that can take care of that so that you don't have those harmful gases sitting in your home. They will come through and they'll give you an idea of all things that could be defects, big and small, so that ideally at the end of the day, you're not probably going to be purchasing a perfect property, but at least be able to get in there and see what you're buying and purchase that home with your eyes wide open. They'll provide you with an inspection report, and that inspection report will go through, give you all the words and all the details all around code and what is legal, not legal, all that kind of stuff, along with a whole lot of pictures so that you know what's going on. This is a service that you will, as a buyer, have to pay for out of pocket. Now, an inspection can cost you a few $100s on up, depending on what kind of an inspection you get, whether or not you do the sewer scope or the radon testing, and any of those potential optional inspections. You'll also be working with an appraiser at some point in time during the process. An appraiser is an independent licensed professional that will be hired by your lender to go out and give their opinion of the value of the property. And at the end of the day, they're going to take into consideration the condition and the value using comparable properties to come up with their opinion of the value of the property. And at the end of the day, that's really what the bank or your lender is going to use to determine how much money they're willing to lend against that property. So you're going to go through, and sometimes you might see some different estimated values, like on sites like Zillow, their automated process. That is a ballpark figure that they use. Well, when you're talking about an appraiser actually goes to the property and provides you a manual evaluation of that property. There's nothing automated about it. These folks go out and put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of thought into making sure that they come up with the exact value that should be assigned to that property. So there is a fee that is associated with an appraiser, and that is usually paid by you, the buyer, and it's initially paid by the lender, and you'll generally pay for that at closing time. There's also a very important role to be played in the state of Colorado by a title company. Some states don't use a title company, but in Colorado we have a title company that does a lot of work on our behalf throughout the process. They go through and they make sure they do the research on any type of prior ownership so that when the property gets turned over to you, that it is free and clear and not partially owned or any kind of liens on it. They will make sure that there is a legitimate or clean title on the property so that when you take it over, there's nothing that could be impeding your ability to move in or use it. They will assign what's called an escrow agent, and that escrow agent was the person who will be doing all of the work for you and helping us through the process. They can perform, and quite often perform, the closing, so the actual act of going through and signing all the paperwork related to the mortgage, to the title, and all the legal stuff that actually takes the process through to transacting the property and the title being recorded with the county in which the property resides. They go through and they do a pretty good job of making sure that we have a smooth transaction. So these companies that we employ, they have gone through and done this thousands of times, and they know how all this works. Again, another group of folks that we put on our team that know about all the bumps that can happen in the road, and they know how to avoid them. Make sure that we do have a smooth transaction. The fees associated with a title company are usually split between the buyer and seller. However, you'll see a number of times throughout the presentation we talk about fees. Quite often these fees are negotiable, and you can go through and figure out as a part of the purchase transaction when it comes to title company fees. We can make that one of those things that we use as a negotiation tactic to determine who's going to be paying those fees. In addition, there's a whole slew of other folks that could come into the process: contractors, movers, landscapers, electricians, and a whole bunch of folks that we could need along the way, or even after you've gone and moved into your new property. We'll be able to go in and take a look at that, and I do have a bunch of folks that are available to be able to help out with that if we do need to get there. So let's go ahead and make a quick transition into talking about the One Financial Plan. Again, we do have on the line and watching our live chat, if you do have any questions related to mortgages, we do have a lender from Elevations Lending available to answer any questions that you might have. So you're going to want to go through and assemble your financial picture. And really your financial picture, a good place to start is your income, collecting your pay stubs, your past 2 W-2s, and your past tax returns to be able to start that process. Eventually, you're going to have some other things that you're going to want to pull into the picture, but the best thing to do is to work with that lender, that person that you've decided to work with, get them that initial information, and they'll walk you through the process of pulling anything else that you need to be looking at. So one of the big things we have to think about is a down payment. So I know I get from time to time, folks get a little bit concerned about what kind of a down payment they have to have. Right, and down payments can vary based upon the various programs that are out there and available. So some programs, usually like a VA or veterans benefits, can get you in for with no down payment. You could have a low down payment, and in many instances, there are different government programs that you can use that could get you into a property for as little as $1,500. Most folks, when they think about a down payment, they automatically assume that they have to have 20% down or more in order to buy a house. I just put this in here and talk about this because that is something that you can do. You can put 20% down. However, it's not absolutely necessary that you do 20% down. It's just that there are some advantages of being able to put 20% down. I recommend that you take all these different options and talk them through with the person that you decide to use as your lender. They'll help you to go through and make sure you use the money that you have saved aside for the home buying process to the best of its ability. Now, there's a number of down payment options, different places you can find down payment. It's not just what kind of money you have in your savings account, but also let's take a look at some of those other options that you might be able to use. In some instances, you could use the proceeds of a sale of a previous home in order to do that. There are also programs out there for first-time home buyers assistance. So if you do want to go out and purchase a property, there's many different programs through banks, through government entities that will allow you to help you with coming up with that money for the down payment. There is also, in the state of Colorado, a first-time home buyer savings account. And if you go to your bank and you decide you want to start saving for a property, you can go through and put money into the specialist savings account. And that money gains interest, and actually the capital gains from that are not taxable. So you can, as long as you take that money and use the money that you make off of that interest and use it towards buying your first home, the government doesn't tax you for that. So that's a nice little perk. Although sometimes the interest rates aren't great on those, but definitely an option that you have for yourself. One thing that quite often gets overlooked is the ability to grab a down payment out of an IRA or a 401k. So you can check with your employer and see if the 401k that you have available to you you're able to withdraw money from your 401k to use as a down payment towards your principal home. In that case, you would borrow the money from your 401k, use it for your down payment, and you do have to pay that money back. But the awesome part about that is that you are taking that money and you're paying yourself back. Instead of taking out a portion of that as a loan and paying that interest to a bank or to somebody else, that money that you're paying back is being paid back to you and will be back available in your retirement account for your use in the future. And also don't forget about the use of angel funds. So if you have a friend or family member who is able to help you with some of that money be able to go towards a down payment, that's always an option. There will be other cash needs throughout the transaction. So some of those things that you're going to need before you go through in closing. When you put an offer on a property, you're going to have to put down what's called earnest money. And that is money that's real money that has to be deposited with the title company, usually the title company, at the beginning of the transaction, to be able to hold that to show that you're serious about purchasing the property. You will need to pay up front for the inspection, and there may be other fees that are associated with that along the way. That's one of those things where, my experience, we dive into that stuff and keep all that in mind so that you're not having to come out of pocket with a whole bunch of money as you go through and purchase your home. Right? There's a number of fees that will likely be paid at closing, so they'll be paid when you go through and close with the title company. Things like your appraisal, some of the loan fees, some of the closing costs, and those kinds of things will be paid for, but they aren't paid for until you get to the closing table. So the first thing you probably want to go and take a look at is getting pre-approved with your lender. So your lender, you'll go through and getting your pre-approval, you actually go through and fill out an application for your lender. They will need some of that financial documentation that we talked about earlier. So you'll be able to provide them with your pay stubs and your tax returns and that kind of stuff. They will do a credit inquiry, so it will be a hit on your credit report. But this goes through, and it's not a final approval. This just gives us the ability to put together a lender letter and will tell us likely what you can afford, and really gives us some direction as we go and take a look at what kind of property you're going to look to purchase. Now, you may say, my credit stinks. Now is a good time for you to be able to get in and take a look at your credit report and actively be cleaning up your credit report. So if there's bad addresses, old account balances, those different things, if there's any inaccuracies, make sure you go through and dispute those. As you go through, obviously paying down any kind of balances will work to your benefit. Make sure you keep up on all your payments. Late payments do quite ding your credit. Student debt is one topic that comes up quite a bit. Now, the government has doing a better job of helping us get out of student debt and pay down our student debt. Make sure you're keeping up with that. Your student debt will take a little bit different role in your financial picture as opposed to like credit card debt. So make sure as you go through, you're talking with your lender, and your lender will be able to give you very succinct information on how student debt affects your debt to income ratio. There are laws related to fair credit reporting. I won't hop into any of that kind of stuff, but as you go through, there are laws that do protect you as a consumer to make sure that whatever information is reported on your credit report is fair and accurate. So one of the things we do need to make sure we talk about is your credit score. So if you go out to the web and you pull your own credit score, it's going to be, that number. Hopefully the higher the better, in the 700s and 800s, hopefully. But there are multiple types of credit scores. There's a retail credit score, and that's the one that you see. There's also no other way to call it other than a bank's super secret credit score. That's the credit score that's going to be used to qualify you for a mortgage loan and is not something that you can access. Generally speaking, fortunately, your bank credit score is going to be lower than your retail credit score. So again, make sure you're working with your lender to understand what that credit score is and how you can make sure you have the highest credit score to be able to get the best mortgage. And unless there's any questions that we have related to the mortgages, we're going to go ahead and dive into what it means to get into that home search. All right, so let's go ahead and keep moving on then. So along with our buyer's roadmap, we've built our team. We've taken a look at our financial plan. Now let's take a look at searching for those homes. So there's more to just looking at beds and bathrooms. So folks, a lot of real estate agents will ask you, well, what kind of home? How many bedrooms do you want? How many bathrooms do you want? Well, there's more to buying a home than just bedrooms and bathrooms. So we have to make sure we look at what's your ideal lifestyle. Do you need to, live near school, live near work? Do you want to be in a specific school district? Those types of questions. And as you go through and figure out what you want to have in your future home, make sure you talk through that with me or your real estate agent to figure out exactly what's going to be the best fit for you. There's different places where you can take a look at searching for a home. Of course, there's the internet, and pretty much any property that you're going to be able to take a look at is going to have online pictures. So you can look at, like my website, homesbywads.com. You can look on Craigslist, Zillow, Realtor.com. There's many, many mobile apps that are out there. And with all those websites, you can get these auto emails set up that can be emailing you the properties that are of most interest to you on a regular basis. So it'll send you those results on a regular basis. I use a particular website called recolorado.com, and what it allows me to do is that's the Denver metro area MLS, if you've heard that term, multiple listings service, where it will list all the properties that are being offered for sale. And we can go through, and it has very robust search features, and we can set that up so that it will automatically email you anytime a property comes up with the specifications that you're looking for. There's also the available to buy something directly from a current owner, a for sale by owner, a FSBO, sometimes you'll hear it called. But those folks, you will not find those properties on the MLS, not on the recolorado.com, but you'll find those usually by driving around a neighborhood and seeing the signs for sale. And in some instances, you go into those FSBOs and they're not willing to work with a buyer's agent. So if you do take a look at a FSBO, make sure you walk in there and you're asking all kinds of questions as to how all that process works. There is also the possibility of going out and working with a new home builder. So there's a lot of new home neighborhoods that are going up all over the place. Now, one of the things that you'll hear usually from a home builder is that you don't have to have a buyer's agent with you in order to buy a new home. Well, technically that is correct. But again, if you think back to that neat little video we had earlier about Mike Tyson fighting Mike Tyson in a boxing match, do you really want to go into that process all by yourself and try and fight that big name boxer, that big name home builder all by yourself? Generally speaking, a lot of home builders will pay for the commission for a buyer's agent. And then you have somebody in your corner, somebody there who's able to help you see what's in all those contracts and provide you with information related to that particular home before you go through and purchase it. Obviously, as you go through and you continue to refine your home search, make sure you keep your agent informed, and your agent can make sure that you're looking at all of the components involved in finding the right home for yourself. You're going to want to make sure that you prioritize your needs versus your wants. So do you have to have 3 bedrooms, or in that 4th bedroom is nice to have? Or is that 4th bedroom absolutely a must-have because you're working from home and need your own space? So create those list of must-haves. Also create the list of what I call the deal breakers. So for those things that absolutely will mean this is not the right home for you. So have those in mind as well. So if not having an office, or not having a finished basement, or not having a second bathroom where you can have somebody else, the guest shower, make sure you have all of that list put together. Good way to do that, once you find a property that you might be interested in, is to go through and drive the neighborhood. So go ahead and drive through and see what the streets look like. Are the streets well maintained? Are there parks nearby? Are there stores nearby? And there are also research things that we can do from your agent, can send you where the local grocery stores are, the post office, and those types of things to help you make sure that you're not only picking the right house, but you're picking the right neighborhood as well. We can go through and we can set up the automated searches like we talked about earlier. And you're going to want to make sure that as you go through and take a look at homes, that you continue to keep your agent update. So keep me updated with what you're looking at, what is your thumbs up and what's your thumbs down through this process. So some of the hints as you go through and you do your online search. So the sites you're going to look at are connected to your local MLS. Just know that you're going to see these pictures. The pictures show the best part of the property that you're looking at and hide all the worst. So make sure that you don't go just based upon pictures that are online, that you work with me and we go through and we actually take a look at the property. Those pictures can be deceiving from time to time. Read the descriptions carefully. Sometimes the words that the listing agents choose in that are chosen carefully, so you should be a careful reader to make sure you understand what you're looking at. Also know that on sites like Zillow, these online valuations are a vague estimate. So they'll tell you it's worth a certain amount of money, and there are computer algorithms that it uses to try and figure out what that value is. Just know that it's a ballpark figure. So a lot of these properties now have these virtual tours. They allow you to step through the property, and if you have a set of VR goggles, you can even make it look like you're walking through the property. They're kind of cool. Also, make sure you take a look at Google Maps for additional views. So Google Street View can be very telling as to what's going on with the property. Obviously, when a seller gets ready to sell a property, they put the spit and polish on it to be able to make sure it looks the best when it's being sold. But the Google Street View can be insightful in being able to go through and see what the property looks like on a regular basis. Make sure that as you're working with me and as your agent, you go through and you get the comparable sales from other properties around. You can flag the ones that you love, and that keeps us in contact with what you're looking at, what you're not looking at. Trash the ones you don't. Be flexible. If you see something that I think you might want to take a look at, be willing to take a look at it. Not necessarily just take a look at things. Sometimes we're trying to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and making sure we see those things in person helps us to get that right thing. Ask for other opinions. So you can always ask around and see what's going on to get you the best look at what's going on. You can check other sites like Facebook and other locations that might have properties available. And also check your neighborhood sites. So for some of those neighborhoods where you might be targeting, sometimes you'll see like Facebook groups or whatnot that might have information related to the homes that will give you insight as to maybe an HOA or some other thing that might give you some insight as to what the property looks like. So looking at homes for sale, obviously we're going to look at the pictures and online, the virtual tours. I mentioned the VR goggles. Some of those are kind of cool. It makes you look like you're actually walking through the property. Then we're going to want to make sure that we go and we take a look at the property in person. So getting out there, making sure that, if you need to, I can go out and I can preview a home for you so I can get the first look at it if you don't have the time to make sure you get out there. And then whittle that down and make sure you take a look at the ones that are on your short list. Make sure that you're using your time to the best usage. So COVID-19, of course, that was a thing and continues to be a thing. So there continued to be different protocols in place to make sure that we don't spread COVID-19. They do change from time to time, so I'll make sure that when we go out, we keep all of that in mind. So searching troubles, right? So as we go through, make sure you have me reach out to owners who might sell. If there's properties that you don't see that are in a neighborhood that you're looking at, I can also go through and I can reach out to possible sellers, people who aren't actively on the market but might consider selling. So do be ready. Don't jump at the first thing that comes up, but make sure that you're ready to take action when you do find something that you're looking for. As I did mention earlier in this little broadcast, we were talking about the fact that demand is still high and supply is still low. So if you go in and you see something that you like, you'd be ready to move on it. So also make sure that, we've already talked about getting pre-qualified. So make sure that you have your funding in place before you go to take a look at properties. Then again, that gets you in the right place to be able to pounce on something when it feels like the right place. So as you go through and you're looking at homes, also think about the possibility that you might have to change your must-haves, your price, or your location to be able to get what you're looking at. I've had a number of clients go out and they're absolutely positive they know what they want, but as we start looking at properties, things change, and your opinion will change too. So what's cool is once we've gone through and we looked at all these things, we got the financial piece out there, you're going to find the one, the right home, the place that you can see yourself coming home to, sitting down on the couch after work and calling home. So we're going to talk a little bit about the one process. So we've built our team, we've got a financial plan, we've searched for homes. Now we're going to start diving into some of the contract negotiations and the due diligence and getting ready for your closing day. So making an offer, we'll go through, and again, I mentioned some of these contracts. The contracts are very involved, and we'll go through together and make sure as we write the offer, we figure out how much you want to offer, determine what other non-cash factors might play a role in the offer that you are putting out there, hopefully to make it the most appealing to the seller. Your agent will communicate with the listing agent. So once you start a relationship with me, I will take care of talking with the other agent, and I can act as that filter to make sure that the information that is being communicated back and forth is true and accurate, and that we're talking all the same language. So I will submit the offer on your behalf to the listing agent. We'll go through a little bit of a negotiation time, and we'll see whether or not your offer is objected or accepted. Hopefully it's accepted. And there may be some back and forth that we have to go through, some offers, some counter offers and things in order to get to that place. Once you've gotten your offer accepted, then there is that earnest money that you'll need to deposit with the escrow company that's going to be handling all that. There will be a number of things that we have to take care of throughout the process, these dates and deadlines, title search, disclosures, inspections, and really all of these dates and deadlines that we put on the contract are there to make sure that that everything is taken care of in a timely fashion, and that we all make sure we're marching to the beat of the same drum toward getting through to the end, to the final line. So we mentioned the title company earlier. We kind of went through that. So just to kind of reiterate, title will go through, do their due diligence, make sure that there's a clean title, everything for you. And if need be, pull an abstract of title and a kind of a summary of everything that is needed there. They'll issue what's called title insurance, and that title insurance makes sure that the research that's being done, that after the fact that there's no surprise that pops up and that could potentially affect your ownership. Right? There's more documentation that we'll go through. I want to actually dive into each one of these, but there's a number of disclosures, a number of things going on associated with the purchase process. So these are things like the seller's property disclosure and the square footage disclosure. We'll go through and make sure that you understand what those are, how those work, and we'll review those together. So wells and permits, all kinds of making sure that the process goes through. And that you have the most information that you need about that property. We talked about the inspection earlier. The inspection, you'll get that scheduled. It is an in-person inspection. The inspection will come back with many, many pictures and many, many things associated with it. As a part of that, we will go through and we have the inspection resolution period that we can go through. What that allows you to do, if there's something that comes back in the inspection that might need to be addressed before you take possession of the property, we can either do that through something being fixed by the seller, through any kind of negotiation of the purchase price, or some sort of terms that change with regard to that. And the nice thing there is, because of some of these dates and deadlines, we have the ability to get you your earnest money back if something doesn't work. So making sure that I, as your agent, am going through and keeping all that stuff in mind for you. Then there's the loan application and appraisal. We talked about going through and getting pre-approved. As I mentioned, that wasn't the final approval, but we do have the ability to go through and then at this point in time, go through the final loan process. They'll make sure they have all of the updated financial picture, your most recent pay stubs, your most recent W-2s, if anything has changed in your financial picture, and put all that together. They'll order that appraisal that we talked about. They'll go through a process of making sure that this underwriting process to make sure that the loan is right for the property. And then at the end of the preliminary work, they'll present you with the loan details. So exactly what amount of money that they're willing to loan on that property, the percentage rate, any other terms that might be applicable, and those will be presented to you by your lender partner. We also have the ability to go through and talk about if the appraisal comes back at a different value than what we anticipated, and the bank isn't willing to lend as much money on the property as we thought initially, we can go through and we can make any kind of modifications to the agreement or terminate the agreement if we absolutely have to. but making sure that the financial terms, it's something that you can afford in your regular payments on a monthly basis, and at the end of the day is a good financial decision for you. We'd already talked kind of about that appraisal, so we won't dive into any more details there. There are other considerations, contingencies, if we need to go through and have a survey conducted to make sure we know where the property borders are. You will need to make sure that you get your homeowner's insurance in line prior to closing on the property. That will be something required by your lender to have in place. We'll want to make sure that you have something in place if we need repairs. I got hit by that lovely tornado last year and still working with my home insurance to make sure we get everything repaired. If you do have a property in a floodplain, looking at flood insurance. We also have the probability of wanting to look at a home warranty. So a home warranty covers those things that your homeowner's insurance isn't going to cover. We'll also have the ability to take a look at any HOA, any homeowners association documents, if you do happen to be looking at a property that is in an HOA. So you'll have to take a look at all that documentation, their rules and regulations, and you will have to agree to live by the covenants for that HOA. The nice thing is, during the due diligence process, we will get a copy of all those rules and regulations. You'll have the ability to take a look at that and make sure that those are covenants that you can live by. And if not, there is a possibility of you being able to get out of the transaction in some instances. With all contracts, so the state of Colorado gives us mostly the approved forms that we get to use, kind of makes things standard and keeps us all in order. I will be available to make sure that we can go through the contracts and disclosures section by section. If you do get into a section that you're not quite comfortable with, we do always recommend that you reach out and contact a lawyer where you need to make sure that what you're signing is you're in agreement with. These are legal contracts and you will be bound by them. So we have to make sure that you know what's going on, and if you need to, contact a lawyer. The other thing here is I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not a CPA, and there could be things that could affect your financial picture in the future, how much tax you owe, different financial considerations. If you are curious about how any of that works with your particular situation, I do recommend that you have the ability to contact an accountant as well. Just know that we will be doing most of the signatures electronically online. So electronic signatures are binding just as much as physical signatures with a pen and ink on paper. The only thing that we absolutely cannot sign online is the final documents. The title document has to be signed in pen, in person, and in front of a notary. So the exciting day that we get to, that's when all of the inspection, appraisals, loan, and all of this other stuff we've been talking about is all taken care of. We're able to get to the closing table with the title company, and that's when the actual transaction takes place and the transfer of the property, the ownership of the property goes from the seller to you, the buyer. This is usually done at the title company, sometimes with an attorney, but in the state of Colorado, generally with a title company. Again, that's when the actual transfer of possession of the property takes place. And sometimes you actually move in that same day. Sometimes you might have to go through and negotiate what's called a post-occupancy agreement, where the seller is able to stay in for a certain amount of time and be able to take possession. You'll take possession at a later date. That's where we get the final signatures. And that's when all the changing of money takes place. So the purchase price goes to the seller, commissions get paid to different places, the fees get paid, and all that kind of fun stuff happens at that point in time. The title company will also go through and take all the documents that are necessary to be filed with the county in which the property resides, and they'll take care of that after the closing. That, in a nutshell, is the process. You can see, even though we're hitting it at a 50,000-foot view, still a pretty complex process. And as your buyer's agent, that's something I'm there to help you through. So we'll hit real quick that one move, right? So at the tail end of everything, once you've got it purchased, it's time to actually move in. And that's, at the end of the day, yes, the actual act of moving isn't all that fun, packing up, unpacking. But making sure that you're going through your budget your move. If you do decide to use a mover, that you're interviewing movers and making sure you get the right one for you. Sometimes you can, using what I like to call the pizza and beer method, be able to get your friends to hop in and help you put together the move itself and lug that couch, and hopefully they don't have to carry a piano at the same time. But I do recommend and that you go through, and before you move, you do things like declutter, get rid of the stuff that you don't need. So either sell your stuff like on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, have a garage sale, donate all of that stuff. Keep in mind that stuff, when you donate it to places like Goodwill or Arc Thrift Store, those are all tax deductible. So make sure, and most of all, that you dispose of hazardous property properly, so that paint and those things that can't go in landfills don't. When in doubt, throw it out. I have to be a little embarrassed to say that after 22 years of living in the same property, we still go through and find things in boxes in our basement that we haven't used in over 22 years that came from our last house that probably should have been thrown out. So be diligent and make sure that you're going through and taking only what you need and letting the rest of that stuff go. All right, so timing. So the timing for your moving, absolutely you have to make sure that once you've taken possession, that you're able to move after closing and take possession if there is a post-occupancy agreement in place that you're waiting to move until after that time. Post-occupancy doesn't always exist, but if it does, continue to work with me. Make sure we know that when you're able to actually get into the home. Ideally, you're doing some of the maintenance before you get moved into your new place. The best time to paint is when there's no furniture in the place. So if you do want to change the color of the walls on the inside in that living room, it's a good idea to try and do that before you move in. Moving is also more than just hauling boxes. So there's all these different things that have to happen with regard to how you get moved in, your utilities, upgrading your driver's license, if you're going through and updating, any of where your bills are being sent, and you're getting registered to vote so that you're voting in your new polling location. So moving in, ideally you go through and you have a plan before you unbox. We like to kid that when we moved into our house 22 years ago, my mother-in-law came and helped us to unpack things. And she put some things in the kitchen in a cupboard, and they are there in that same place to this day. Now, it may or may not be the right place, but that's where she put it, and it's still there. So have a plan before you put it there and not just be able to have it just appear in a spot. If there's any kind of new appliances or anything that you need to come in and you need to get a new washer or dryer, a new dishwasher, ideally you get that before you move in so that you can put all your stuff in and around it. And that's really the tail end of things, and that's when all the party happens. I've always wanted to be part of one of these little parties, the chalk parties, where they throw all the colors in the air. It might be fun one of these days. So that's a really, really long-winded way to get through the home buying process. There's a lot of things to unpack in there, and we've gone through a lot of information at a very high level. And I've got my information here so that you can go through and you can contact me at a later date, and we can go through and dive into any questions. I haven't seen any questions come up on the chat, so either what I've thrown out here is just absolutely overwhelming, and you'll probably take this back and sleep on it and have more questions later. But I'm always happy to take your call, or you can take a look at my website, send me an email. You can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram if you want to get out there, see what's going on. If you take a look at my Facebook, quite often I have a lot of articles related to owning a home, maintaining a home, that kind of stuff that you can take a look at. But give me a call and let me know if there's, even if you're not ready to buy right now, just have a couple of questions about saving or where you can come up with down payments and that kind of stuff. I'd be very happy to help you out and see what that looks like for you. So with that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and end that with the webcast for today. There's been a lot of information there. Thank you.